Good morning. This morning I would like to share with you a true story. I recently introduced a new debate topic to my augmentation classes: climate accords and greenhouse gases. I took an informal survey to start things off and discovered that 60% of the students had no idea as to what greenhouse gases are or why they might be bad. I was astounded. These are mostly juniors and seniors, and I had expected to jump into the topic and just start brainstorming. But apparently, that was not meant to be. So, feeling very frustrated, I asked myself, what would Marzano do? I rushed to my desk to pull out my handy copy of Practicing Skills, Strategies, and Processes and started reading. And that is where I discovered the chapter on fluency. The problem is that Marzano describes automatic processing in fluency in a very limited fashion. He tells us that students need to develop the skill of doing things without conscious thought at a very young age. Things like being able to read and being able to perform one-digit math operations. And while I may have taught fourth graders at one point in my life, I did make the assumption that most of the juniors and seniors were beyond that level. So as important as we all know those skills to be, this was just not going to solve the problem of global warming. So I decided to try and follow the steps that he suggests to achieve the controlled process of fluency, the kind that students use when they set up experiments or when they write an essay. One of the things that Marzano tells us is to identify, model, and demonstrate the skill that we are trying to teach. And then, of course, to practice the skill that is being taught. Again, that seems to work well in a number of disciplines, but did not seem to offer the solution to my augmentation classes. So I looked at what else he had to say, and he suggests that you chunk the process for learning fluency in the skill. In this case, we tried some individual brainstorming, and then sharing of the research with the individual unassigned teams, and finally, collaborating on the final team essay. He suggests adding to this process by presenting some supplemental materials, and then separately he tells us to teach the inherent conceptual knowledge needed for the skill. Now we were getting somewhere, and while at first glance it did not seem that fluency makes much sense in a social studies type of a class, maybe there's a place for Marzano after all. Now to go back for a moment to the English, math, and language teachers in the group. Marzano does offer you a few other suggestions, some basic thoughts, asking if you have enough time and enough intensive practice on new types of problems, enough review practice of older problems, if you give students realistic amounts of time to do things, if you keep records of progress in the area of fluency, and if you have some sort of motivation system in place. Of course, we know that all CWNC teachers do all of these things, but Marzano knows that teachers at other schools are only human, so he gives us all some sorts of caveats. Things we might not be patient enough about, since, after all, we do know all this material, and we might have forgotten how long it took us to get to that level of fluency. We need to be sure that we give students the time that it takes to learn the fluency in the skill we are teaching. Sometimes we forget that students know things, but is it our job to remind them about what they know? And if they have really forgotten the skills, or if they don't know them, then it is our job to teach them where they are. Some skills come easily to us because we've been practicing them forever, but that doesn't mean that everyone can learn everything overnight. Students need repeated practice of all their skills, the new as well as the old. And sometimes students just aren't ready for us to teach them what we think they should know. It is good to challenge, but not good to give them challenges that they have no hopes of meeting. And the end of this true story, since the augmentation class solved the problem of international accords and greenhouse gas emissions, or at least they solved the problem of writing cases worthy of submission to the international competition, we all get to live happily ever after.